That's me. Can you hear me? Does that sound good?
Yes, very nice.
Must be weird for you guys who produce shows to be like sitting here
It is
being
weird.
produced.
Yeah.
We don't like it.
Weird.
All right, so let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Okay, I have some things to tell you. First of all, as you're hearing this, as you're hearing the conversation that you're about to hear, you're hearing us speak on the day that our show begins its second decade of existence. And apropos of that, we're going to do a show that's a little unusual. In fact, it's very unusual. We're going to do a show because we've done thousands of shows, literally more than 2,000 shows, each of which was about a topic or a series of topics or a group of topics. We decided that we would do a show that was not about something, a show that is not about tapirs. Tapirs are a certain kind of animal. We can't tell you very much about what kind of animal they are because today we are doing a show that is not about them. It is specifically a show that is not about tapirs or tapirs. All right, so in the studio with me now to sort of get things going and just sort of give you a sense of how people are feeling about this right now is senior producer Betsy Kaplan, who doesn't want to be here and doesn't like this, and Carlos Mejia, the Mejiasaurus, WNPR's digital producer, and is sort of the newest member of our little family. Jonathan McNicol, who is producing this entire episode.
And also doesn't want to be here.
And also doesn't really want to be part of this conversation, but is the only other person who really is behind this concept. And then finally, producer Josh Nilaya, who is bitterly and angrily opposed to this whole idea. So I think I've effectively set the stage here. The whole idea is we've done so many shows that were about various things. Could we possibly do a show that is not about something that is I mean, we've done 2,000 or more shows that didn't deal with tapirs in any way, but they were not specifically not about tapirs. But today we are going to do a show that is specifically not about them. So a tapir is a certain kind of animal, and we will eventually, by talking to a zookeeper, explain to you a little bit about what a tapir is, just because I thought it was important for you to understand what we're not doing a show about. But I think it is now. So, Josh,
Sure.
Every time this comes up,
Yeah.
you, who are ordinarily, I think, a rather calm...
Yeah, I'm pretty easygoing.
You're a mild-mannered person.
Yeah, I think this is like the first show that I've really strongly objected to us doing.
I don't know if it's the first show.
No, I've
think it
had
is.
my doubts about shows before, but I've always been, behind them, sort of hoping for the best, like eager to sort of see what they turn into. This one I just don't think should be on the air. And Colin, you said that we've done thousands of shows that have been not about tapir, but this is the first one that's actually, I mean, in essence.
No, we've done thousands of shows without doing a show about tapirs.
Right,
but we've never done a show that was not about tapirs.
But actually, this is the only kind of show we've ever done. We've always done shows that were not about tapirs. The only difference with this one is that we're giving it a label. Like we're saying what it is.
I'm starting to get really confused.
I know.
It's just like every meeting we've had where we talk about the show.
We've never.
We should say, I'm going to let Jonathan respond to that in just a second, but we should say that, Carlos, you went through a period where you would go to meetings where this was being discussed.
Yeah, you said you put this on the calendar about 2 years ago. I've been here a little bit more than a year and a half. And I remember this came up really early, and I just remember thinking, oh, this is something that they're talking about from like an old idea meeting, and I'm the new guy, so I don't know what they're talking about. But then it just kept coming up.
It didn't get any clearer to you.
No. At this moment, I'm still not 100% sure what we're really talking about or what we're not talking about.
All of our prior shows that were not about tapirs, they're kind of like Seinfeld. That was not about anything. And this, to me, seems like the episode of Seinfeld where they pitched the idea to the network execs, and it sounded like the worst idea ever. As soon as you sort of like state your intentions to do a show that is not about something, then it becomes a bad idea.
I have a very specific thing I want to say about this because I knew Seinfeld was going to come up, and I was pretty sure you were going to be the person who brought it up. But Jonathan, before I do that, did you want to say something?
I just want to, it's fundamentally different. What we're doing today is fundamentally different from all the other shows ostensibly not being about tapirs. They weren't intentionally not about tapirs. Tapirs could have come up at any moment. Colin's the kind of person who's likely to bring a tapir up at any moment for whatever reason. This is a hole that we've consciously chosen to shape a show so that it's not
All right.
about Tapirs.
But-
I do want to make clear that I didn't bring a tapir up, like I didn't adopt one and raise him as my own.
But this is becoming a show about tapirs.
No,
that's
not
exactly
we're
right.
not.
Well,
it's
we're
not.
talking about it
No,
now.
we're talking about not talking about
We're like
it.
talking about the word.
So here's
of
the
it.
thing I want to say about the Seinfeld thing, because this helped me think about this. So let's think about shows that we've done in the past. Okay, so Josh did a show about hats one time. So that's about something. It's about hats. So that's like on the scale of being about something. That's an 8 or a 9 or a 10 because it's a show about hats. All right. So then Seinfeld, if Seinfeld were truly a show about nothing, it would be 0 on the scale. This is a negative number, right? We're trying to do a show that is a negative number, that is actually, as opposed to being about something or about nothing, is specifically not about a thing. So, and I think that's never been done before in radio. I don't think anybody's ever. Carlos is like pinching.
It just doesn't even make sense. And I'm sitting here listening, and I'm just imagining what listeners are thinking, hearing this. This is specifically not about something.
Right. It's not about something.
But doesn't that make it something?
It's exactly right.
Exactly.
That's
yes.
exactly
it's
right.
Making it about something.
And it is very gimmicky. And I've always thought, I've always thought, even since before I worked here, one of the magic of this show is that we would do shows about topics like hats or shoes or donuts
Or tapirs.
or tapirs. I don't think we've ever done one, but
we did a show about beavers, which are very much
sure.
like tapirs.
Like we would do shows about that, and that all those ideas sort of verged on being a gimmick. But we saved them from being a gimmick because in the process of doing that show, we would sort of drill down into them and reveal some truth about that topic, which kind of like unites us as people or something. And like,
so nicely
And
put.
voila, suddenly it's not a gimmick. This show about shoes is not a gimmick. It's like a really interesting show that people want to listen to. And this is not that. We've gone.
You think the show has no potential to do that?
I would
think
say
exploring the negative regions of information.
Exactly. I would say
we can possibly get to some deeper truth.
No, we've gone full. As Robert Downey Jr. said in Tropic Thunder, we have gone full gimmick. And I don't think he used the word gimmick, but
Yeah.
I'll say another objection I have, and I say this mostly in jest, but not entirely,
Right.
is this like how insulting is this to tapirs and to all those people who love and study tapirs that somehow we find shoes and hats and donuts worthy to do an hour-long discussion on. In tapirs, we finally met our match.
Well, they are kind of funny looking, you have to admit.
Sure, but like we finally met our match, a topic that is so unworthy of our time that we not.
No,
I
if we were
think
totally
you've hit
unworthy.
a nerve now.
Well, first of all, I think we have to acknowledge, Jonathan and I have to acknowledge something about this, which is the madder this show has made Josh, the more we've wanted to do it. And that has kind of fed our delight about the whole idea. But no, I think you have to pick a topic that has enough substance, that takes up enough space on Earth that you could do a show that wasn't about it.
Right. And
And now you've lost all of us.
oh, come on. There will be one or two parts of this show that contemplate whether or not we should have done the show about tapirs.
Right. And we should say that tapirs do represent a part of the climate that's endangered, and we are going to put on our website some information about how to help save this thing that we're not doing a show about.
If we do any of that, we have ruined the premise of this show.
That is a question.
That's
But
right.
how
It is about tapirs.
But how can we do a show that's not about tapirs without at least acknowledging their existence? All right, Jonathan, you have something you want to say.
I just want to say we've afforded ourselves the option of failing during this show.
Right.
It may wind up being about tapirs at 1 or 2 points.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that at a certain point Jonathan and I had to acknowledge was we shouldn't be afraid to have it fail a little bit and have tapirs creep in. Because first of all, that's something tapirs like to do. They wait until it's very quiet.
That's right.
And then they creep in.
This moment right here is about tapirs. But anyway, go ahead.
So I mean, yeah, we're trying to do a show that's not about tapirs. If we occasionally fail, if there's a little crack in our armor, that's okay. We can still live with that. That'll be okay. All right. So I should tell you that some of the things that we are going to talk about today, we are talking to a person who teaches meditation, because I think, one of the things is you're trying not to think about something and trying not to talk about something. Obviously, that's, sort of like meditation. You have to sort of clear your mind. How do you get the T word out of your mind? And we'll also be doing a few other interviews with people from here around the building about this very exciting project that we're doing right now. And we'll be talking to at least one person outside the building, renowned broadcaster Mike Pesca, who has enjoyed for the last really 10 years making fun of really bad ideas we've had. Yeah. So we're going to have a conversation with Mike about whether this is one of them. All right. Anything else? Anybody else wants to say?
Why Tapirs? Why did you put a show not about Tapirs in the calendar?
It has to be something. Because they're funny. I mean, they're kind of amusing. If you've seen pictures of them, they're funny. I don't know. They've always been kind of a funny thing. You know, a tapir is something you have to really work at not doing a show about a tapir. All right, because you barely know what it is in the first place. All right, so I think we should wrap this segment up here.
Yes, I agree.
We have got other stuff coming for the 7 or 8 people who are still listening to this episode. There's a lot of excitement coming, so no flipping.
Yay.
Yay.
That was like 3 times as long as I expected we'd be able to
We'll
sustain that.
just cut out all the stuff that Betsy Kaplan said.
We can talk about Cato and Plato and Beto. We can speak of Daenerys or Kamala Harris. We can talk about anything, so it appears. But let's not talk about tapirs. We can talk about Mookie and Suki and Wookiees. We can talk about Solo and YOLO and Polo. We can talk about anything in the newspapers. But let's not talk about tapirs.
So as the host of a show, and the host of a show that just turned 10 years old, you know, I don't have that many other people I can talk to. I mean, there aren't that many other people who are hosts of shows, first of all, and then there aren't that many other people who would put up with an idea as strange as the one that we came up with. But Mike Pesca is probably my best hope, kind of like Obi-Wan. He's my only hope. Mike Pesca, of course, is the host of The Gist, a terrific 5-day-a-week podcast that you can hear on Slate, and you should. You should seek this out on all your different podcasting platforms. And interestingly, Mike's show this year, or within the last few months, turned 5 years old. So you, first of all, Mike, you understand what it's like. You hit one of these big marks, and you take stock, right? You wonder what it is that you haven't done yet.
Yeah, and you think it matters, and you wonder why no one else cares.
Right, and so that's you've summed up very beautifully and touchingly part of the position that I'm in right now. And so what I thought was, we've done more than 2,000 episodes, that each of which was about a thing, or maybe a couple of things. Everything was about a topic. What if we tried to do a show that was not about a topic? What if we picked something and tried as hard as we could to do a show that was not about that thing?
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I guess the closest analog I could think of is something like the Herald from Improv, where they go in without anything set and nothing is pre-planned, but one word or suggestion is given, and I guess you just have to have that suggestion as a jumping off point, and they begin free associating. Though if we broke down what free associating is, I'm sure it's not totally free. The very fact that we're thinking in and uttering a shared language shows that there are some restrictions to it, but from that something arises. But I don't know how to do that other than you come up with a fictional work of improv. Can you essentially do a Herald where you're not trying to create a situation, and it would be nonfiction? I mean, it would get somewhere. It would certainly waste the listener's time, but I think something like that could happen.
We've already succeeded in doing that quite a lot. But So what we decided was that we would pick a particular thing. And so I'm going to say that thing. It's an animal called a tapir or tapir. One of the things that we like about this particular animal is that there's not a common consensus about how even to say the name of the animal.
That's good.
And so we are doing a show that's not specifically not about that animal. I've kind of violated the premise of the show a little bit by telling you what that animal is. But on the other hand, we're probably not going to entirely succeed at not doing a show about tapirs anyway.
My kids used to watch Dora the Explorer. Dora had a number of friends, and one of her friends was, I think she called it tapir, but who knows?
Yeah.
And if you didn't know, just based on the animals that are exposed to children, I think there was one point in their life where they thought that of the 4 animals that aren't pets in their house, tapir must have been one of the top 4, just based on its presence on Dora. We could do this to people.
See, that's an interesting generational thing and it's also the best cinematic or dramatic experience that tapirs have ever had, because their other big one apparently is that at the beginning of 2001, where they have a bone, they're hitting each other with a bone and stuff like that. It's a tapir bone. They've killed and processed a tapir That's whose bone it is.
Is it the nose bone? Because I guess that's the tapir's most prominent feature. Their proboscis.
Yeah. But see, look what's happening. We're talking about them, Mike. We're talking about them. We're trying to do a show that's not about them, and we're talking about them.
Are we trying to not? I haven't thought of an elephant, though.
Yeah, that's true. See, that is very much the analog. I mean, yeah, don't think about an elephant. Well, obviously, then you do. And for that reason, we are talking to a person who teaches meditation to see if there's a way we can screen it out.
Right. So I think what you'd have to do to not do a show about tapirs is to intensely research tapirs and find their most essential elements and then veer away from that. So you wouldn't do what I did.
Yeah.
You wouldn't talk about nature.
Right.
You wouldn't talk about the fact that they live for, 3 more years in captivity, which is something actually that's interesting. What do you make of this, Colin? You always hear that animals in the wild have a lifespan, but then in captivity and domesticity, much longer lifespan.
Right.
I always question, well, does that argue for captivity? The very word captivity would seem to argue against it. Or does that say something about how we ourselves as human animals, we default to lifespan as a huge indication of quality of life? It seems to be wrong. It seems to be the exact opposite of what we should be defaulting to.
Right. I mean, and it probably is true that if you can control an environment, you can probably... Remember about a year ago when they whacked a Whitey Bulger in prison?
Yeah.
And he was like 89. Like, what's the point of killing somebody who's 89 years old? You'll never see 90 again, Whitey. So, but
the assassin dubbed himself the actuary.
But it's probably true that if you have a person or an animal in captivity, you can make sure it eats the right things, and maybe it doesn't do some of the wrong things. Maybe you bug it to go out in the yard, get some exercise. It probably is. And you're right. We have a prejudice, a bias towards lifespan.
And I also think that the idea of free-range animals, which we think is good, it's only good for us.
Right.
See, okay, cages and confinement is wrong, but do you think animals want to be free-range? When animals are free-range, there's still a range element. I think they just want to be free.
Right.
I don't know what they want. The wants of a tapir are immaterial to me and us in this conversation.
You know what a tapir wants? It wants to live fast, die young, and have a funny-looking corpse.
Maybe influence a Stanley Kubrick film, albeit obliquely.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Mike Pesca, as usual, I think, first of all, that you've got to something that we hadn't gotten to, which is that, yes, one way to not do the show about tapirs or do the show that's not about tapirs is to locate the glowing white heart of the truth about tapirs and then steer away from it. Take your space shuttle and veer off in a completely different direction.
Right, that's the photo negative. And since the white heart would also be about something, you'd, I think, have a penumbra, right?
Right.
And the penumbra could be so many things. Yeah. That's it.
And so the gravity of the tapir might keep pulling our space shuttle back towards it, but we have to just gun it with a little extra energy to try to get away. All right. So if that was a conversation that you enjoyed and even stayed with all the way through, you should be listening to The Gist, which is even way better, actually.
We have topics, though, I swear.
Yeah. Already you don't want to be damned by association to this thing. You're like Peter. You're already denying that you had anything to do with this.
Well, while I admire the tapir experiment, we do not indulge in said experiment.
All right. Mike Pesca, host of The Gist, thank you so much for joining us again.
Oh, my pleasure.
Only one thing's forbidden, so why not renounce it? Let's just keep it hidden while we can't pronounce it. There are so many things we can sit and dissect, like the wind in Nepal or the rain in Utrecht. But darling, one thing's for certain, and one truth is true. When I don't talk about tapirs, I want to not do that only with you.
So there's actually one person in our newsroom who really knows a lot about animals and thinks a lot about animals. And when she first heard that we were going to do a show that had something to do, she kind of overheard because she works on a different show. She thought we were going to do a show about this animal that she finds very interesting and started immediately sending us pictures of baby you-know-whats. And then we had to tell her that it was actually a show that was not about you-know-whats. But so joining us now is Carmen Baskauf. Carmen Baskauf is responsible for all the terrific programming on the episodes on Where We Live, where you hear Lucy hosting a show that's about animals or the natural environment or wildlife issues and stuff like that. It's usually Carmen. In fact, when Carmen was an intern, she did our show about foxes. So it started early. So this is sort of an awkward thing because you would basically be in favor of the show that we are doing the negative image of.
Right.
You would be in favor of doing a show about tapirs. We are doing a show that is not about tapirs. So what would be the case for doing the kind of show that you would want us to do?
Well, I mean, I think I have a bias towards doing shows about cool animals, but I think you could make a good case that... Can I say that word on air?
You can say tapirs, yeah. We might bleep you, we might not.
The do count as a cool animal.
Yeah.
They're big mammals. They sort of like pig-elephant combo.
Right.
Both individually good animals, in combination even better.
Yeah. Although they are more closely related to horses and rhinoceroses.
Right, right.
You
But
probably knew that. You knew that.
I did know that.
I'm telling you stuff you know.
That's
why we're not doing a show about them, because
I
you
already know
already
the
know
things.
that stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I do think the fact that at least some of them look like giant Oreos is a really strong point in their favor. I was describing this to you earlier. It's like I think it's the ones in
They don't actually look like giant Oreos. I mean, they don't look like a cookie with 4 legs.
But it kind of, if you took a cookie and then cut it into the shape of a it would look like that.
Well, yes, if you cut it into the shape of a rhinoceros, it would look like a rhinoceros.
Well, all right, so big pig-like thing. I think they're like 600 pounds or something like that.
Yeah.
And it has prehensile nose.
Right.
So it can like grab stuff with its nose. Which
They
is
can't
always
see what
cool.
you're doing with your hand in your nose right now, but
I'm
take my word for it at home.
prehensiling.
Yeah.
And then so these Asian have black head and like front legs, I think maybe, and
Yes.
then a
White filling.
white filling, and
Yeah.
then their butt's black.
Yeah.
So it does. I mean, it is very much.
There's a. I see what you mean. There's
An
an
Oreo
Oreo,
feeling.
kind of an overstuffed Oreo thing.
Yeah,
going
very
on.
like a triple, quadruple stuffed, I'd say.
Well, tapirs are good eating. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
They are good eating.
Yeah, I think that's a problem they have. 'Cause
Yeah.
people like you.
I mean, no, people don't. First of all, please don't eat any tapirs as a result of this show. I would feel really bad about it because they're part of a very endangered ecosystem.
right.
Too. Right.
And I think their numbers are not as high as they would be because people like eating them.
Right. If we were
So-
doing a show about them, we would really be emphasizing that
Right.
fact. But we're
not.
We're not. Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
I know they are like a very ancient branch of mammals.
Mm-hmm.
So, most of our like ancient giant mammals that we have, especially in the Americas, are all gone. I just made Lucy do a whole show about this, in fact. But they're these, big animals, and they're still around, and they, I think, haven't changed that much since like millions and millions of years ago. A group of tapirs is called a candle.
A candle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know who gets to like make up these terms.
Yeah, who
I
does
think
get to make them up?
I think there's just
crows.
like a person on the internet who just puts out.
No, this is before the internet.
Pre-internet.
I lived before the internet. I am pre-internet.
But did you know about the
hominid.
candle?
No, I'm saying
probably,
these ideas have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
All right. So Carmen Baskauf, producer for Where We Live, would be probably doing more of a show about this thing that we're not doing a show about if she were in charge of the world, which she's not at this moment.
Unfortunately.
A couple of years probably that'll be different.
We can roar about Spitzer or Wolf about Blitzer. We can talk Parker Posey or else Kaiser Soze. We can talk of our hopes and our dreams and our fears. But let's not talk about tapirs.
Part of the focus of this show is not thinking about a certain thing, right? Having the ability to control your mind well enough not to think about a certain thing. And in some ways, that is part of one of the things that you do in meditation. But I think we have a lot of misconceptions about what meditation is. So we're going to talk to somebody who actually knows, and that is Susan Piver. She is a meditation teacher, speaker, longtime Buddhist practitioner. You can find out all about her courses, some of which are online kind of e-courses that you could actually take by going to SusanPiver.com. Her most recent book is The Four Noble Truths of Love, Buddhist Wisdom for Modern Relationships. She's joining us by Skype. Welcome to our show, Susan Piver.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
So I think a lot of us do have all kinds of misconceptions about meditation. I think we think we're supposed to let our minds go blank or not think about anything. Or so maybe you could begin by just sort of talking a little bit about the mindset. What is it that we're trying to do as we're trying to maybe clear our thoughts?
So I love that question. And for some reason, the analogy that came to mind was if I had a slice of pizza for everyone who asked me, how do I clear my mind of thought in meditation? I would be very fat. Let me just say that. Because in meditation, the biggest misconception is that you're supposed to stop thinking. And to imagine that you could do that is actually an act of cruelty, I would say, to yourself, because if you're looking out through your eyes, which are meant to see, or hearing out through your ears, which are meant to hear, but you tell one of them, okay, now stop seeing or stop hearing. That's what it's like to tell your mind, zip it, stop thinking. It is not natural. It's not great, even if you could do it. So what? So that is the biggest misconception about meditation, is that you're supposed to clear the mind of thought, which is not so.
There's actually a term that does come up is monkey mind. Tell us about monkey mind.
Yeah, monkey mind is the notion that your thought uncontrollably jumps from thought to thought like a monkey swings from branch to branch. And sure, okay, nobody really loves the monkey mind. Nobody says, yeah, monkey mind, you should get some more of that. But include it as part of your inner environment. So instead of saying to yourself, oh, stop doing that, which of course only intensifies whatever that is, you say, go, swing, go ahead. But while you're doing that, I am going to focus on something else. Or you come to notice that your monkey mind is not the only part of your mind that is functioning right now.
So I think one of the things that we struggle with in life are intrusive thoughts that we don't want to have. Right. And this could happen just if we have just time on our hands or we're trying to fall asleep at night. And I would imagine also when we are attempting to meditate. And they are the thoughts. I mean, it's the thought of the anger that you're feeling right now about a raise that you didn't get at work that you thought you were supposed to get, or the incredible regret you feel about a relationship that didn't work out that you really thought was the one. You know, those are the thoughts that I think are the most destructive, that eat at us. But they're also the ones that seem to clamor the most loudly, that seem to insist on getting through the door somehow. So, Susan Piver, what do we do about those?
Well, if you want to stop thinking something painful, don't meditate, because that will not help you. Meditation, contrary to popular thought from time to time, amplifies the inner state. It doesn't calm the inner state. It shows you what's there, not what you wish was there. So if you want to stop thinking things that are painful to you, go to a movie, take a walk, talk to a friend, just do the normal things that we do. The more we treat our mind as an enemy, the more it will attack us. So if we say, of course, nobody likes to deal with the painful thoughts, but we have painful situations, especially like you say, relationships that don't work out. So, but if we try to turn that off as if it were a spigot, it just makes it stronger.
So one of the things we thought we would try to do today is to see if it's possible to do a show that's not about something, that's not about a certain thing. And so we picked an animal called a tapir or a tapir. So, but one of our thoughts is, the more it is like that old thing about, don't think about a purple elephant. Well, we're doing that with an actual animal. The notion of don't think about is one that seems to have the opposite effect, as you're just saying. So I'm assuming, Susan Piver, from everything we've said so far, that you're saying turn and face the tapir, turn and face that animal, and figure out what kind of relationship to have with it, as opposed to just not thinking about it?
Yes, that's exactly right. Turn as if it was a tapir, or as if it was your friend or your child. And if your friend is like, I'm so upset, everything's messed up in my life right now, I'm so hurt, you wouldn't say, shut up. You would say, I'm sorry, or tell me about it. Or the best thing you can do for a friend is just be with them. You don't have to try to solve their problem, just be with them.
Yeah.
So just be with, we are not permitted, we don't give ourselves permission to be with ourselves with a kind of gentleness and friendliness that we naturally extend to others. So turn toward the tapir is a great way of saying it.
Yeah, that's going to be the title of my next book, I think, Turn Towards the Tapir. Yeah, no, I'm thinking Rilke, too, when he talks about how somewhere inside every dragon is a princess, somewhere inside every princess is a dragon. One of the things that we're always struggling is we've made the object of our thoughts into a certain kind of thing, as opposed to all the things that it can be. It turns into just a tapir, a kind of pig-like animal, as opposed to what else is there, right?
Well, any conversation that includes pig-like animals and Rilke is a conversation I want to be in.
Right.
But yeah, so I think also we think, if only I could stop thinking this, or if only I could find the silver lining in this, it would be okay. But those are also thoughts. And the instruction in meditation is not to have no thoughts. It's to let your thoughts be as they are, actually, while your primary attention is on something else. In yoga, that something else is your breath and the movement of your body and how they're synchronized. It's not different from meditation. The object of attention is the breath, however the body is still. So when you get distracted, of course, that happens.
Yeah.
You let go and you come back to your object, which could be tree pose or it could be your sitting meditation practice. And rather than thinking, oh, my thoughts are the big problem, you just sort of imagine that they're like a stream running by your house or your apartment, and you can kind of hear it burbling. But you're in the house, and you're fine, and you're breathing, and the thoughts are ambient. Ambient is my favorite word to use when it comes to how do we work with thoughts. Tune into their ambient quality, meaning their texture, rather than their content. And of course, when that's impossible, because we all have moments where we're super anxious or super stressed out and feels like our mind is attacking us, then the best instruction I ever heard is from the American Buddhist nun Pema Chodron, who said, feel the feeling and drop the story. That is the best advice.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah. I mean, it really is sensing the atmosphere, the air around the taper as opposed to the taper. What else is filtering through? Well, Susan Piver, first of all, I think if you had a slice of pizza for every conversation that included a pig-like animal and Rilke, you'd just have one slice of pizza.
I would be so skinny.
Yeah. Or you'd have to eat it in very small bites to make it last anyway for any length of time.
Funny.
But you've been so great to join us and have this conversation with us. Susan Piver's newest book is The Four Noble Truths of Love, Buddhist Wisdom for Modern Relationships. And also, you should go to SusanPiver.com. You can find out all kinds of wisdom that you could be getting from her. Well, thanks for giving us some wisdom today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wow. That gave me a lot to think about, because really in trying to do a show that's not about a taper, obviously we're putting the taper at center stage and then trying to not do the show, or tapir, depending on how you want to say it. But now Susan is basically saying, I need to turn and face the tapir and see what's there and maybe collect the ambiance around the tapir. But we're going to think about that a little bit more, and then we'll be back.
Only one thing's forbidden, so why not renounce it? Let's just keep it hidden while we can't pronounce it. There are so many things we can sit and dissect, like the wind in Nepal or the rain in Utrecht. But darling, one thing's for certain, and one truth is true. When I don't talk about tapers, I want to not do that only with you. We can honk for Ivanka and thank with a donka. Let's debate Billie Eilish and whether she's stylish. We can talk till we're dizzy, till we get the vapors. But let's not talk about tapers.
So we thought it would be essential to talk specifically to Kimberly Hyde and to no one else about this. She is a keeper at the San Diego Zoo. She handles various animals in the Elephant Odyssey habitat. We'll come to certain animals in a second. But Kimberly Hyde, you're out in San Diego. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, yes.
First of all, give us a sense of the Elephant Odyssey. I'm going to take a wild guess and say that there are elephants there.
That would be correct. Yes,
Yeah.
We definitely have elephants, but we also have a wide variety of animals that basically are representing animals that used to live in Southern California during the Pleistocene, which was over 12,000 years ago.
So, when you say you have animals, I mean, you can't have a dire wolf or something. You can't actually have an animal from the Pleistocene. I mean, do you have like models of them, or what do you have?
Well, we have their modern representatives.
Modern representatives.
The animals that are on exhibit in Elephant Odyssey, most of them, their ancestors have gone extinct.
Yeah.
So we have their modern representatives here. There are actually a few animals in Elephant Odyssey that are representing themselves that have been around Southern California actually for thousands of years, like our California condor and our Baja pronghorn.
Oh, there's a Baja pronghorn?
Yeah, there are 5 species of pronghorn, and we have one in Baja California and northern Mexico that have been around North America for many thousands of years.
You wouldn't be interested in a Pleistocene precursor to the German Shepherd, because I know somebody who has this thing that they say is a German Shepherd, but it's clearly not. I mean, it's way too big. If any interest, because I could probably work out an arrangement.
No, I'm good. I don't need anything, but it is interesting that there are many animals that lived down in the Pleistocene back thousands of years ago that used to be a lot bigger than their modern counterpart.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so we should mention you have a capybara, right? There's a capybara in there?
Correct. We do have capybara.
Yeah. And that's
South American largest rodent in the world.
Yeah. It is the world's largest rodent. I always feel like it gets too much attention. I feel like agoutis, which are also a very interesting kind of Mesoamerican rodent, they don't get anywhere near as much attention somehow.
No, that's true. I mean, I don't know why. Agoutis are pretty amazing animals as well, and pretty cute, just like the capybara. But I think the capybara, draw awe because they're so large.
They are. They're
over 150 pounds.
They are truly a rodent of unusual size. And you got jaguars. Do you deal with the jaguars?
Yes, I am one of the keepers for the jaguar as well. We do have a female jaguar here at the zoo.
Yeah, and I don't know. I would be afraid of a jaguar, but I take it that this jaguar, well, you feed the jaguar, so she probably likes you.
Well, I mean, she tolerates us because we are her keepers and we do provide her food, but no, definitely not an animal that you want to underestimate. Not an animal that we go inside the exhibit with because they can be so dangerous.
No, you're not going to bring a library book in there during your lunch break or something.
No. I wouldn't like it. She would probably not mind it, but I wouldn't come out very
All right. Well. So we have to broach the subject of either tapirs or tapirs. How do you say that particular word?
I say tapirs, but tapirs is perfectly fine.
Right. Well, we'll say tapirs because you're comfortable with it. And so you handle the tapirs in this exhibit, right?
Yes, I am also one of their keepers, but they are also an animal that we work protected context, so we are never inside the same exhibit space as the tapirs because they can be a dangerous animal.
Oh, okay. See, I think first of all, we should explain because a lot of our listeners, they're already very puzzled by this show anyway, but I'm not sure that they know what a tapir is. So maybe you should clue them in about that.
Okay, so tapirs are large herbivorous animals that are mainly found in Central and South America. There is a species of tapir that is found in Southeast Asia, but they basically look like a cross between a pig and an anteater. A lot of people think that they're related to either, but they're not. They're actually closely related to horses and rhinos. So they have a long proboscis nose, kind of like a short-looking trunk that they use to grab pieces of trees to bring them down into their mouth. They also use it in the water because they're very aquatic and they like to spend a lot of time hidden in the water, and so that nose will also be used as a snorkel as well.
Now, Kimberly Hyde, I'm going to ask you to be brutally honest about something, okay? In terms of how interesting you find the different animals, you got your condors, you got your jaguars, you got the Baja pronghorn there, and then you get the tapirs. Where do the tapirs kind of rank in terms of how interesting you find them, how fascinating on a daily basis you think they are?
To be 100% honest, I absolutely love tapirs. I didn't know anything about tapirs before I started working here at the zoo, but I fell in love with them, and they're just amazing creatures. We just, I don't know, they fascinate me just because they look so different and are so strange, but they can be also sort of personable and each have their own personality, and we can work fairly closely with them even though there's a barrier between us.
Right. When you say strange, what do you mean?
I mean, just nobody really goes up to our exhibit and almost knows exactly what a tapir is. They always think it's something else, and so they look like a bunch of different animals were put together. And so they are just different looking than anything, that is normal for most people to know.
Yeah, it sounds like, I don't know if you go to a lot of meetings, we have a lot of meetings in this building and the committees meet about, this looks like an animal that's put together by a committee, everybody sort of had a little opinion about what the animal should be, and this is what they came up with.
Yeah.
So when you say you've come to love them, what is it you love about them?
Well, I mean, personality-wise, they can be very sort of, I guess the word for it is nice. I mean, they are an animal, obviously, and we have to keep our distance because they can be dangerous, but I mean, they enjoy attention from our keepers. We give them scratches. We brush them down with brooms. We give them baths with hoses. So they seem to enjoy, interacting with us. And we had this one older tapir who, he just every day he looked forward to seeing his keepers, and it was just kind of a nice, change from other animals that kind of just are like, all right, you're here, fine, whatever. He actually seemed to be like, oh, you're here, and it was just nice to have an animal that seemed to like to pay attention to us as much as we like to pay attention to them.
Right. What's his name?
His name is Tatum.
Tatum? Well, you're here. He's happy to see you, but I mean, basically, you can't go in there because you don't know what Tatum will do.
Exactly. So we still interacted with him with the barrier, but like I said, like he liked to come up and sniff us through the window. We can give him scratches with a long-handled broom. We can give him, we call it tapir car wash, where we'd use a hose and we'd spray it, and he'd run through the spray of the hose and then come up for a drink and then run through the spray again. And so we were also able to do a lot of medical procedures, easy, like blood draws and x-rays and things like that, because he was so used to having keepers around him and scratch him and relax him into sort of a comfortable state that allowed us to do some, basic husbandry as well.
Right. There just seems to be a tremendous amount of intellectual tension between the way you're describing Tatum and the idea that these things are possibly lethal. They don't look. It's hard. It's hard. You look at them. It's hard to see how they're lethal. We should say that there was a baby born recently, right? Don the tapir.
Don the tapir. Yes, he was born just over a year ago. He was the first bared tapir calf that we've had at the zoo in over 30 years. So he was very special to us, and it was just great to be able to see him, mom go through pregnancy and then have him be born and then have him grow up, and now he's going to be moving on to another zoo to continue on the breeding program somewhere else. So this whole life, this whole life cycle.
Right. So you don't want to get too attached to Don.
No, but that's not hard. Yeah. That's hard to do. we always get attached to our animals. I mean, we work with them at least 5 days a week, every week. And we are, even if a barrier between us, we still get good relationships with each of our animals. So we do have bonds. We still care for our animals. We still will miss them when they have to go on to another zoo or if they pass. So we definitely have relationships.
Oh, yeah. And I'm looking at a picture here that I believe is a picture of Don, the tapir, and a capybara kind of looking at each other, enjoying each other's company, it looks like, maybe?
Yeah, so that capybara, her name is Bristle. She is one of our sort of more tactile capybaras because she was born at the zoo. And so pretty much from the time that she was eating solids, which was only a few days old, we would interact with her because we actually go on exhibit with the capybaras. And so we would hand feed her. We would give her scratches. And so she is a really calm animal. And so we introduced her to Don when he was little. Since Don's mother was unable to care for him, he was hand-raised by keepers, but we wanted him to learn how to be a tapir and be around other animals. So Bristle sort of served as his first surrogate animal to interact with.
Isn't there a risk that he'd wind up thinking he was a capybara?
There is possibly some risk, but we also did have other tapirs that we introduced him to. So we just started with Bristle because she was the easiest and has the most calm personality. So we started with her just to see how he would interact with other animals, and then go from there to introduce him to other tapirs.
Yeah, she looks really calm in the picture, too. So Kimberly Hyde, I'm going to ask you one more question. We were talking to Kimberly Hyde, who's a keeper at the San Diego Zoo. This is going to sound like kind of a strange question, but just bear with me on it. Do you find when you go home from the zoo or when it really isn't part of your job to be thinking about the tapirs, do you find yourself thinking about them?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. If it's not just recollecting the day and how the day went and, if they did something that, funny or interesting that I just, mull over my brain, it's just also thinking about what I'm going to do for the next day for their care. How do I continue to improve my care for them and make sure that every day that they have with us is the best day that I can provide for them. So it's, thinking of new enrichment, new things for them to do, new training sessions that we can establish with them. So yeah, almost every day I go home and I think about my animals.
You think about the tapirs. Yeah.
And the tapirs that day.
Yeah.
It's all the time. We think about the animal, our tapirs, every day we try to find, something else to help improve their lives here.
Because, the reason I ask is because when we're, as part of the show, we've been trying not to think about tapirs and not to talk about tapirs, and it's difficult. I think you would agree that it's difficult not to think about them.
It is very difficult not to think about them because they are really interesting, charismatic animals that, they're always on my mind.
All right. Well, when you go home tonight, you have a glass of wine and just see if you can not think about them. It's going to be hard, though. I think when you try not to think about something, it makes it harder.
It does.
Yeah, it does. All right. So Kimberly Hyde, a keeper of the San Diego Zoo, she handles the zoo's tapirs and other animals in the Elephant Odyssey habitat. She will not allow a jaguar to harm her, so don't worry about that. And thank you so much for joining us, Kimberly Hyde.
Of course, you're welcome. Anytime.
Only one thing's forbidden, so why not renounce it? Let's just keep it hidden while we can't pronounce it. There are so many things we can sit and dissect, like the wind in Nepal or the rain in Utrecht. But darling, one thing's for certain, and one truth is true. When I don't talk about tapirs, I want to not do that only with you.
Feel comfortable talking about how you feel that this didn't work. Okay, let's see how this goes.
All right.
So 3, 2, 1. So 10 years ago, when the show was started, it was started by me and a young man named Patrick Skahill. And that was it. That was, we added Wolfie a little bit later, but for a long time, Patrick and I were the entire staff of the show, which is why I learned the word karoshi, which is the Japanese word for death by overwork, so that if and when Patrick died, I would have something I could tell his parents. I would say, it's karoshi. Google it. But he didn't die. Instead, he got a more reasonable kind of job as an excellent news person and science reporter. He also obtained a restraining order against me so that I couldn't go near him. He's actually agreed to waive that for this conversation, beginning our second decade here with this show. So, Patrick, we attempted to make some kind of point by doing a show that wasn't about something, which I don't know whether it was a thing you would have countenanced during your days as the originator of this show. But I also concede freely that we had to tell people what it was we weren't doing a show about.
Well, and I think therein is your problem, right? Because you are setting yourself up for failure. There is no way that you can do a show about something when you don't talk about it.
Well, see, that would have been helpful if you'd mentioned this to us a few weeks ago, because we really put quite a bit of effort into this undertaking. And so you feel it was doomed from the start.
Well, no, I mean, I think, as always, it is a heroic effort put forth towards a noble goal, right, which is to do a show about something, but not talk about that one direct thing. It's a nice little tightrope you're walking. You fell off,
right?
And that, and that's okay.
Right. Exactly. That's how I feel too. That the goal was probably the journey. Maybe I'm just reframing this now in a way that will make me feel better. But the goal was the journey. The journey was this kind of Zen koan. Can you do a show that is not about a thing, without losing sight of that thing? So the journey was important.
The journey is important, and not to get all mushy on you, Colin, but one of the things I do love about this show is that you're okay with falling on your face sometimes, and that's good. It's something that a lot of public radio shows are not okay with, but you do that here sometimes. And we did a whole show about toast once. Right. Abject failure, complete, total, utter failure, horrible show. But we did it. We still talk about it.
What I like the most is that this is your idea of getting mushy.
But I even made eye contact with you. You did not make eye contact back.
No, I'm like trying to focus here. But no, I mean, your wife says you still wake up screaming like 2 nights out of 3. So, well, first of all, thank you for getting the show started, because we wouldn't be sitting here doing a show that didn't work very well if it weren't for you.
Proud to be a part of it. Still my favorite show on the radio.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Patrick Skahill. Thanks to everybody who worked on this show today, and particularly Jonathan McNicol, who is probably in general the person most willing to follow me down paths of folly. And I'm hoping that maybe you, the listener, did sort of learn a little something about our process here as we exposed, maybe the worst possible process. It's still not all that different from our usual process. So anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for listening for 10 years. We'll be back with another show very soon.